with that out of the way, we move to the college football Week 12 slate. We have 5 games that we're going to break down and predict. It is a big week in the SEC, which to some extent feels like every week. But let's get things started with number 10 Texas going to Athens to take on the 5th-ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia is 5.5-point home favorites with an over-under of 48.5. Braden, who do you like here?
I'm going to take Georgia to cover in this one. And I'm going to take the under at 48.5 here. It felt like Georgia finally put everything together in their win over Mississippi State last week. The offense was great. I think they had 24 points at halftime. I think they finished with, 41 points for the full game. Texas still has kind of failed to do that. They've been winning games, but you go to overtime against Kentucky and overtime against Mississippi State in back-to-back weeks. You have the loss to Florida in there. Texas just has not figured things out to the level they need to so far, and going to play at Athens is going to be extremely, extremely difficult. Maybe there's some motivation from Georgia going into Austin last year and knocking off the Longhorns, but I think that Georgia thoroughly wins this game. I think they win it by double digits. If I'm given a score prediction, I'm going to go Georgia 28, Texas 13.
That's a thorough beatdown. I respect it. This isn't necessarily a must-win for both teams, but especially for Texas. Yeah, especially for Texas, it feels like it is. These teams played twice last year, as you mentioned. Georgia smoked them in the regular season in Austin, and then beat them again in overtime of the SEC championship game. Neither offense has been spectacular. They rank 7th and 10th in the SEC, respectively. I believe Georgia is 7th and Texas is 10th. However, both have been heating up as of recently. You mentioned that Georgia game against Mississippi State last week. I think this is going to come down to which quarterback plays better. Texas has the 2nd best run defense in the country at 78.7 rush yards per game allowed. Georgia is not far behind with the 12th best run defense in the country. Gunnar Stockton has been playing some pretty phenomenal football going back to that Ole Miss game. And Arch Manning in that Vanderbilt game a couple weeks ago looks like the preseason favorite Arch Manning. I think this is going to be a pretty back and forth game, not necessarily high scoring, but in the sense of there's going to be plenty of lead changes. But in the end, Georgia has won 36 of their last 37 home games, and I need to see Texas win a game like this before I pick them to. So I will take Georgia to win. I'm not going to go as far as saying it's a blowout. I think Texas is going to cover the 5.5, but I'm with you. I will take the under in a, we'll say 24-10 victory for the Georgia Bulldogs. Another big one in the SEC this weekend, number 11 Oklahoma traveling to Tuscaloosa to take on number 4 Alabama. Alabama 5.5-point home favorites with an over-under of 45.5 points. Who do you like here, Braden?
I'm going to take Alabama to win and to cover here, and I'm going to take the over in this game as well. The Oklahoma offense hasn't been as explosive since John Mateer returned from injury, especially in the passing game. It still hasn't been terrible by any means, but we're not seeing Mateer throw for 300-plus yards like he was at the beginning of the year. The defense has also been a little bit concerning as of late. Back-to-back games, they've allowed 450-plus yards against Ole Miss and against Tennessee. Alabama has continued to roll after its ever more inexplicable opening week loss to Florida State. And at home against good teams, they've beaten Vanderbilt by 16 and Tennessee by 17 last week. LSU is not a great team this year, but they held LSU to just 9 points. And, even with the interim coach bump, which I thought LSU would get, I think that's a little bit impressive there. So I'm going to take the Tide in this one. I'm going to go Alabama 31, Oklahoma 20.
And I mean, that Alabama LSU game last weekend, it was 20-9. Realistically, that could have, and I would argue probably should have been closer to like 31-9. There was some meat left on the bone for Alabama offensively, but I digress. This feels like do or die for Oklahoma. The difference between Oklahoma and Texas, in my mind, is head-to-head, obviously, where Texas has the advantage. But also one of Texas's losses came to Ohio State in Columbus. And so I think that gives them a little bit more leeway. This would be Oklahoma's 3rd conference loss, and it's hard to imagine that the committee would be allowing them to sneak in with an unimpressive conference resume. These are 2 of the top 3 defenses in the conference, but both are defenses with flaws. Alabama has struggled at times to defend the run, but has been pretty damn good against the pass. And Oklahoma has really struggled to defend the pass, but has the fourth best run defense in the country. And that is kind of funny because Alabama cannot run the ball to save their lives, but they have a very, very good passing attack. And John Mateer has been pretty sloppy through the air since his hand surgery. They are coming off a bye, so we'll see if that extra week off does anything for his health. But he and their running backs can move the ball on the ground. It sounds super cliche what I'm about to say, but I think this game is going to be won by whoever plays their game at a higher level. Both these teams play very similar. They love to hold the ball and keep your defense on the field. So time of possession, I think, is going to be a huge stat to look at the end of this game. In Oklahoma's 2 games against their strongest passing attacks, which is Ole Miss and Tennessee, they gave up 315 and 393 passing yards in those games. At home, I have more faith in Ty Simpson and the Alabama defense than I do for John Mateer and the Oklahoma secondary. So the other thing, too, that I didn't mention, it's worth noting, this is kind of a revenge game for Alabama. This was the game that ended their season last year in Norman. If I remember that, something tells me they remember that as well. I do think it will be a close game, but I will take Alabama to win. I'll take Oklahoma to cover the 5.5 points, and I will take the over in a 27-24 victory for the Tide. Next up on the slate, we travel to the ACC in a battle of number 9 Notre Dame and number 22 Pittsburgh. Notre Dame is 12.5 point favorites with an over-under of 55.5 points. Who are you taking, Braden?
On paper, these teams are not 12.5 points apart, especially with this game being played at Pitt. However, Pat Narduzzi has basically explicitly said that he does not care what happens in this game. I mean, he said, like, oh, Notre Dame could drop like 100 points on us and it doesn't even matter. So given that, I think Pitt is going to be looking ahead to their last couple of ACC games. I think they pretty much try to keep things vanilla in this game. It doesn't matter to them whatsoever. So I think Notre Dame rolls in this one. I'm going to take Notre Dame with a final score of 34-7. I think they just dominate Pitt, and I think Pitt basically just punts this game away after the first quarter.
Yeah, and I have the Pat Narduzzi quote here. When asked if this game is a must-win, and I quote, "Absolutely not. It is not an ACC game. I'm glad you brought that up. It's not an ACC game. I'd gladly get beat 103 or 110-10 in that game. They can put up 100 on us as long as we win the next 2 after that." Not exactly what you want to hear from, a coach of a team that at this point has legitimate playoff aspirations if they win the ACC. The matchup of the game for me is going to be Jeremiah Love versus the Pittsburgh run defense. Pitt has the 3rd best run defense in the country, allowing 80.9 rushing yards per game. Jeremiah Love averages 110 rush yards per game, and over the last 3 is averaging 153 per game. Pitt's quarterback is a true freshman in Mason Heinschel. He's 5-0 as a starter, including a win in Tallahassee against a, at the time, ranked Florida State team. But Notre Dame has multiple future NFL defensive backs, so this will pretty comfortably be the toughest test he's had. Notre Dame's quarterback, C.J. Carr, since their 0-2 start, has 18 total touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. And the other thing, too, Notre Dame cannot afford to lose another game. This is comfortably the hardest game they have left for them on the schedule. So if need be, I expect them to empty the playbook. I will take Notre Dame to win. I will take them to cover the 12.5 points. And I will take the under at 55.5. I will say Notre Dame 34, Pittsburgh 17 in a game that is never particularly close. Moving from the ACC to the Big Ten, we have number 21 Iowa taking on number 17 USC. USC is 6.5 point home favorites with an over-under of 49.5. Who do you like, Braden?
I think this is either going to be my favorite game I end up watching this weekend or one of the most miserable that makes me want to tear my eyes out. Iowa led Oregon with under 10 seconds remaining. So even traveling to Los Angeles, that 6.5 point spread feels like a little bit too much for me. The game's at 3:30, so it's not like it's a super late West Coast game where Iowa's playing at like 10 o'clock local time. So I'm not too worried about that aspect of it. I think USC wins this one outright. I think they are the better team, at least playing in the Coliseum. I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game as well. We've seen that consistently from Iowa for the most part this year, especially when they're playing other good teams. Like the Iowa State game, I think was pretty low-scoring. The Oregon game is obviously low scoring. The Indiana game is low scoring. So I'm going to go with the under at 49.5. I'm going to take USC by a final score of 20-17.
And yeah, I am very much on the same page as you. This is the second best offense in the country in terms of yards per game in USC versus the fourth best defense in the country. It's an elimination game for whoever loses. It'll be Iowa's fourth loss. It'll be USC's third. USC goes to Oregon next week. USC's running back King Miller is a freshman walk-on, and he's averaging damn near 8 yards per carry. Oregon ran all over Iowa last week. They gave up 261 rushing yards in that game, and USC is running for just over 200 yards per game. So expect them to try and establish that ground game early and often. I think if Iowa is going to win this game, it's going to be because they force a couple turnovers. Jaden Mayava, USC's quarterback, has thrown an interception in 5 straight games. So if they can get that USC offense off the field, I do think that Iowa will win this game. They had success with play action last week against Oregon. That's where the big plays came from. And as I was doing some research, I realized that Mark Gronowski actually had more passing yards last week than Dante Moore, which going in, I would have never expected, considering the state of those two offenses. But it sounds like there's going to be some rain on Saturday in South Carolina, in South California. And I think that probably plays into Iowa's strengths a little bit more, or into their favor a little bit more. I think this is going to be a very close game, much like you do. I will for sure take Iowa to cover the 6.5 points. I think, boy, I didn't even jot down who I think is going to win. This is going to be a game time decision. I'm going to take USC to win narrowly, with the under in a colder, rainy game. I will say USC 21, Iowa 20. I think is going to be razor thin. Might even come down to a last-second field goal for USC. But I think this is going to be a very close game through and through. And then the last college game on the docket, number 24 USF at Navy. USF 9.5-point road favorites with an over-under of 64.5 points. Looking at the teams, you would not expect this to be a meaningful game, but there are very legitimate playoff aspirations for both teams in a sense, mainly USF. But Braden, who do you like here?
Yeah, Navy's got a little bit of an uphill climb if they want to make a real chance at the playoff. They need a James Madison loss, and they need to somehow squeak their way into the AAC title game, which is going to be pretty tough to do. But Navy, I mean, they aren't really an incredible group of 5 team, despite their 7-2 record. It's kind of inflated by playing a lot of bad teams in non-conference and in the early part of the American Conference play. They've gotten some tests in the last couple of weeks and gotten throttled by, I think it was North Texas and Notre Dame. USF, though, has already lost its first tough road AAC game. They played at Memphis, lost on I forget exactly what happened there, but I think it was a walk-off field goal for Memphis, right?
Well, the final score I think was 34-32, so that would sound right.
Okay. I remember watching it, but I can't remember how it ended. I think it was a walk-off field goal. So something to keep in mind there. USF's already lost a tough road game in conference play. Navy averages 6.1 yards per carry, leads the nation in rushing yards per game at just under 300. USF's strength of its defense is its run defense more than the pass defense. But something tells me that Navy is going to pull off the upset here and win this one in a shootout in Annapolis. So I'm going to take Navy to cover 9.5 and to win outright as probably, I would guess like plus 275 to like plus 300 on the money line. I don't have the number up in front of me, but that would be my guess. And I'm going to take the over at 64.5. I'm going to say Navy 38, South Florida 35.
On Veterans Day week at that. Doesn't get much more patriotic than that right there. This could very well be which team gets a stop first. Navy, as you mentioned, has the best rushing offense in the country. USF is one of the best offenses in the country, period, and has the second best run defense in the AAC. Navy quarterback Blake Horvath did not play last week against Notre Dame. I don't think it would have mattered if he did. They lost by 39 points. But he should be good to go this week. I don't see Navy being able to keep up. For as good as that offense has been, their defense has not been on par. They've given up 30-plus points in each of their last 5 games. South Florida is a top 20 team nationally in turnover margin as well. And they know that at this point they control their own destiny. I think USF gets it done and remains the front runner for the Group of 5 bid. I will take Navy to cover the 9.5, though, at home, with the over just hitting in a 35-31 win for the Bulls.